I am Julie Holton. I am the owner and principal strategist of mConnexions Marketing Agency. We are a full service marketing agency. I also host a YouTube show called Expert Connections and would like all of you to be featured in our Marketing Connections segment because you know something about marketing that the rest of us either don't know or have not expanded upon. I'm a big believer of sharing in community, which is why I really love this event and why we have these guys here with us today to talk about AI. I did not really prepare an intro to kind of dive in because I want to give as much time for questions, but I was reflecting a little bit and have been quite a bit lately about AI and how much marketing is evolving. I was having a conversation yesterday with a really small group of successful CEOs. And it was just like an informal conversation about marketing. And as I was driving there, I was thinking, what do these guys who are not doing marketing on a daily basis, they have teams for that, hopefully, what do they want to know or what do they want to talk about when it comes to marketing? And I ended up really focusing on AI. I don't know about how you guys feel. We'll get into that as we get into the interactive portions, but it feels at times like we're entering into the wild west of marketing, that it is obviously AI is going to change our worlds in many ways and many industries. For those of us who work in marketing, it's kind of like, okay, take a deep breath, buckle up, because there are a lot of things changing and we can choose to let that be scary and overwhelming, like I think a lot of people are. Or we can look at it for all of the opportunities that it presents and all of the positive changes that will be coming. And so I'd like to start there. The first thing I'm going to ask you guys is, first of all, what is AI? And what is, when I ask you, if I when you hear me say it's the Wild West of marketing, are you excited? Are you cautious? How are you feeling about AI?
It's good you started with a softball question.
Yeah. Man, so I'll start with the excited part. I mean, those scales that go to 10, we're at like a 30 or maybe a 50, something like that. That's how excited it is about AI. This technology is just going to sweep over everything and change the world. Man, I don't know how you feel, Jesse, but I think we might see computers that are smarter than people, in the next, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, 2 years. Who knows?
Sometimes I think my computer is already smarter than I am, just for all the user errors. Jesse, what do you think? How are you? How are you feeling? What's the sentiment right now?
I don't know the
For you.
sentiment. Yeah, so I mean, for me, I see it as a tool, right? So I don't know that I have like a strong feeling. I see its massive utility, and so for me, anything where I feel like there's a lot of utility and a lot of productivity, I guess that's inherently exciting for me. We're certainly trying as fast as we can to bring it into the DNA of our company. And I was speaking with some people earlier about this. I mean, it's really we're bringing it into every part of our operation that we can, and it's becoming a baseline expectation that my team use this technology just as a matter of course. And I think to Dave's point, I was speaking with people earlier about this. Like Bill Gates has a blog. It's called Gates Notes. It's phenomenal. Everybody should read it. And in the blog, he wrote in March. He said that in his lifetime, he's seen two technologies that he thought were just bonkers, not his words, mine, transformative. The first was personal computing, which obviously he ushered, and he said this was the second. He said, in my lifetime, there have been no other two technologies that have come close to being as impactful as these two. So I sort of took that to heart, and we're trying to really make it a part of everything we do.
Okay, by a show of hands, I'm curious in the room, who is currently using AI in some way in your life, whether in marketing, work? Okay, who is thinking about, maybe you're not quite using it yet, but you're thinking about it? Okay, good. That's a good mix. How many of you would say, of those who are using AI, how many of you are feeling pretty good about this? You're kind of staying on top of the news. You feel pretty comfortable. Okay, I love it. Okay, so, okay, one more question. How many of you are using it to create content? How many of you are using it, if you're an entrepreneur or somehow involved in business operations, how many of you are using it to help your workflow? Maybe kind of business operations side. Okay. How many of you are using it in some other way that you'd like to share? Ryan? Okay.
Like I said in the beginning, I use it to help nurture and follow up with communications that may be coming into a business. And so using the language model to intelligently respond to questions that customers have, train it on the business that they are communicating in, to then respond back to answering not just frequently asked questions, but then to take it to the next level to drive a conversion, and whatever that business conversion might be.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat just so that the camera knows. In very simple terms, Ryan is using the learning language model, training the model to be able to help in communication and in lead nurturing and in responses. Desi, okay, go ahead.
Recently for job interview prep.
Love that job interview prep.
Questions and told me to ask me those questions, listen to my answers, and give me feedback.
Excellent. So she said she's using it for job prep, kind of having it ask her questions. She's giving her answers and getting feedback on that. For the couple of people, I asked this just so that we get a sense of where everyone is in their AI journey so that I can try to formulate some questions towards that and we can kind of answer towards that. For those who are not yet using AI, maybe even just start using it personally. We use it to figure out recipes and travel plans and how to talk to our teenage son, because that sometimes you need a robot to tell you how to do that. So many ways to be using it. Jesse, I want to start with you. When it comes specifically to the marketing tools, using AI tools for marketing purposes, one of the things Ryan mentioned was, or everyone kind of talked about content creation, their hand raising. In addition to content creation, we have chatbots, we have we have data. Talk to us about the different tools that you use or are out there on the market related specifically to marketing.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug our YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to the Super Web Pros YouTube channel, you definitely should do that because I'm releasing videos on AI every week at the moment. And in fact, one of my most recent videos, I did talk a little bit about this. So in terms of tools, well, I think everybody's using Chat GPT 4. I think at this point, if you don't have a paid subscription, it's definitely worth it. And if you're seriously in marketing, I think you should have it. And we're certainly like anybody else. We're building our own GPT models to do specific things like our email marketing or whatever. Um, Outside of that, though, we've got a series of tools that we're using. We've got servers that are hosting workflow applications that have direct integration with not only GPT but other models like Assembly AI, some different Hugging Face models to accomplish different things. On the marketing side specifically, I would say that probably through two of our most productive workflows off the top of my head. One is the video publication. So I will record a YouTube video or a video for YouTube, right? And I will save it to an S3 bucket. At that point, there's a listener on the S3 bucket that will then send that media file into Assembly AI. I think is what we use for that one. It'll generate the SRT captions. It'll also generate a YouTube description. It'll generate a series of titles for my team to look at to choose from. It'll generate an outline, not an outline. It'll generate a draft of 3 blog posts. So again, we can go and edit. And I do all of these things in multiples because I don't want my team to think that the finished product is a finished product. It's a drafting product. And it's so much easier to look at 3 items and critique them than it is to sort of take one and assume it's been done well, right? So that one upload then generates the SRT, the headlines, the YouTube descriptions, a blog post that we can then use, and the email, right? So all 5 of those pieces of content are just generated by me uploading the one video. And then similarly, we've got another workflow that where we can take customer support tickets and our responses, and that gets fed into a model so that we can generate content based on that. So we know we're generating content that will answer questions that we've already been asked, and so we know they're important. Or at the very least, they've taken time. And then the final model that we're working on is taking our entire knowledge base. So we have a knowledge base using discourse.org software where we've got our own open source version of it. And we are vectorizing our entire knowledge base so that we then are able to interact with our knowledge base via a chatbot. So anytime we learn something, the entire team is able to get access to that communal learning in a very easy to use way. So those are probably the 3, I think, off the top of my head that we're using.
Okay, so Jesse, that's awesome. Thanks for describing your workflow. So Jesse has, in short, created a customized I don't even know the right tech word, so I'm just going to make some up. He's created like a customized system using multiple AI tools in order to create exactly what his team needs. For instance, he creates a video, they input it into this workflow system that he uses multiple AI tools, and it spits out exactly what he's looking for because he spent some time training training these different tools to work in the way that works for what they're looking for. Kind of breaking that down, Dave, I'd like to ask about some tools. So especially those who are newer and looking for tools to start with. There are a lot of different tools out there. I know ChatGPT is one that you'll talk about, but in addition to that, I'm hoping you can also mention some tools that are helpful for marketers, for instance, Merlin. Some of these that we've done, Dave and Jesse have both been on Expert Connections doing demos and talking through some of these. So Dave, can you talk about from a content creation standpoint, let's start there. What types of tools, AI tools, could be helpful when a marketer is working on creating content?
Yeah, I think like you said, I think ChatGPT is the main thing. I'm using that every day, multiple times for many different activities from generating content to advising me on how to interact with people or approach things from a strategic perspective, things like that. If I had some kind of sports injury, I would ask ChatGPT about how do I diagnose this injury, how do I fix it, all that. So it's really replaced. Before I would talk to other people or Google search or any of that, and instead of taking hours, now it takes minutes. On the tool side of things, so ChatGPT main tool, but I think there's also it's getting built into a lot. AI is getting built into a lot of tools like Salesforce, HubSpot, Canva, Photoshop, and I think those are a good place to stay if you're already using those tools. Because I think one thing that happened to me probably in March or April is you can get on these checking out tools, and a lot of them are horrible. They demo amazing. Actually, I just checked out one on Tuesday, and the idea there was it's going to be able to automate workflows. So I wanted to go through all my LinkedIn contacts, pull out all that data, put it into a data store. No, the tool can't even can't do anything. And there was so much of that I spent time on in March or April, and so I think people can get lost in it. So I think it's about using brands that you trust and sources. So if you're if you're into SEO or something like that, and you listen to an SEO podcast and they recommend a tool to help with AI or with your process, or a workflow to filter that way instead of just trying everything that says they're amazing and they demo awesome, but then you go to use them and you're an hour into it and it didn't do anything for you.
I'm really curious from both of you. You both talked about ChatGPT. Let's talk about quickly pros and cons of free versus paid. How many of you are using the paid version, ChatGPT 4? I was using ChatGPT 3.5, whatever the paid version or unpaid, the free version. And I was like, I was in my comfort zone, right? I was like, why do I need to pay $20 a month? And this guy, of course, kept telling me all the time, like, just pay for it, just try it out. Drastically different, I think, in the results I was getting. But I'd love to hear from you guys because I don't know why or what the reason is. Definitely start with the free version if you want to start somewhere. But is there a case to be made for using the paid version?
I don't think there's a case. If I didn't have any income, maybe, and I was 12 or 13 years old, then I'd probably use the free version. But I just think every month when I get that $20 ding on my credit card, I feel like that's the best investment I've made. If I go and talk to a therapist, where they cost like $175 an hour, lawyers are $400 to $1,800 an hour. So talking to ChatGPT for $20, the paid version, that's better. I haven't tried the free version, in 8 months, and I don't have any intention to. I have thought about how high would the price point have to go where I'm like, hey, I'm not gonna pay for this anymore. And I don't know if it's in the $200 to $400 range or something like that per month. But yeah, I think it's well worth the $20 of investment when you think about your time and how much is that going to save you to have a better answer than the free version, or to have a wrong thing, or to have a hallucination, or to have an error that shows up in a client.
Yeah, so I have two responses to this. One, I have a whole video on this topic that I released 3 weeks ago.
Tell us again. Super Web Pros on
You-
YouTube.
YouTube Super Web Pros. I did a whole video on right after the dev day that came out a couple weeks ago, and they released all of the tools that they were going to be talking about for GPT-4. I did a review on that, and so I think that video has kind of my opinions on this. I think similar to Dave, it's somewhat of a no-brainer. The quality is so much better. The ability to customize your GPTs is amazing. The token limits are incredible. I mean, it goes to from 4,000 tokens to 128,000 tokens. I mean, for context, right, you can upload a 300-page book into GPT-4 with the paid version and have it ask questions. And by book, I mean export 1,000 emails from your CRM and upload them in, put them in a PDF or a text file and upload them into GPT. And now all of a sudden you've got like a trained GPT. Like it's just um, the capabilities are just stupid. And I think in terms of the price point, right, we pay the $20 plus we pay for API calls we're using. I mean, we've got dozens, hundreds probably of API calls a day, maybe even more. I actually haven't looked at the bill in a while. And I don't care because the productivity benefit of the API call on top of the $20 is just it's totally worth it.
Well, and I'll share from the marketing perspective or within an agency. The reason why I really love the paid version is I can do more customization kind of on the, what do you call it, in the settings portion, where I'm able to say, don't use emojis. Like I don't want my LinkedIn post full of smiley faces or whatever, because it'll, ChatGPT is a starting point, right? It's better than a blank slate, but also I want it to use active voice. I want it to not use the word delve because it tends to put that word in everything. And so I'm able to customize in my settings. I can kind of train it, so to speak. I also can train my own ChatGPTs, which I'm finding takes me. I don't have patience for that because it's still not giving me the outputs I want. So we'll get into that in just a moment from both of you for some tips. But I'm able to give it my parameters, or I can tell it use AP writing style or use story brand techniques and using its, because it's been trained on these things, it is able to then write the content in the way that I'm asking for it to be written. So I find that very helpful. And much less, not only helpful, but also less frustrating. I'm not very patient with technology. And so when it's constantly giving me outputs, I'm like, ugh, this is awful. Like I should have just done it myself, which I then end up doing. I'd rather have the tool be helpful. So I'd like to talk about prompts. And by the way, if you have questions, feel free, go on up to the microphone and we'll, I'll add your questions in as we're talking. So let's talk about creating prompts. One of the things that I find really interesting is when I don't know how to create a prompt, I can ask ChatGPT how to create a prompt. Or once I get through a really long, painful process, I can ask it, okay, what should my prompt have been in order to get this result? And it can give that to me. But kind of skipping, if we can skip that painful process, Jesse, let's start with you. What are some tips you have for creating prompts or questions? These are the things that you're putting into ChatGPT in order to get back the output that you're looking for.
Yeah, so three things. So the first is we've got on our website, if you go to superwebpros.com and you go to resources, we've got what we call our AI starter bundle. And on that, we've got, 200 or 300 prompts already kind of made across things like legal and HR and marketing and all sorts of stuff. So you can go download that bundle. It's got a bunch of prompts, which I think are pretty good. We've used them in different ways. So that's kind of the first thing. I think the second thing is about setting expectations, right? I think that if we're going into any kind of AI with the expectation that this thing will do as good a job or it will replace us, and I think this is where even when people talk about AI replacing people, that's not the point. It's an assistant. It should be augmenting us, not replacing us. So I think one of the things that I think about is expectation setting. And with that said, when I'm prompting it, what I'm looking for is good enough for government work, right? I'm looking for good enough for it to get to a point where we can then take over and start adding whatever unique thing. I'm not actually looking for it to do my job for me. I think that's the wrong expectation. And then the third thing I would say is when it comes to prompts and training, so there is a principle in software about modularization. And so the idea is that you want to have modules that all do their own specific things and they should get really good at doing whatever that model should do, and it should not ever extend past that. I think of prompt training as the same way. So for instance, if I want a GPT to write really good emails, I will build a GPT inside of my paid GPT, for instance. This is kind of my beginner level, and that is all it will do. So I will upload it examples, and I will basically train it to just do that one job. If I need it to do another job, YouTube descriptions, that is another job. It is another module. It is another set of training. So then my prompting starts to become highly specific, just as my data sets become highly specific. We do the same thing with all of our API calls. So all of our API calls, whenever we're doing, we're building our workflows, those are also scoped, in some cases to a specific model we've pre-trained, in other cases with just a very, very clear expectation. So if I want, so I talked earlier about like my YouTube description thing, like that's using one sort of part of a workflow with one very specific prompt. I'm not trying to overload the prompt with do this and this and this and this and this. I want you to do this one job and that's it. And just get it good enough to a point where we can then take it from there. I don't need you to do the job. I just need you to get us started. And so that's kind of the thing for me. It's expectation setting, it's modularization, and then, go download our resources if that's something that would be helpful.
Dave, how do you approach prompts when you're opening ChatGPT? Let's say you're opening it for relatively the first time. What are some word choices or some tips you have for someone who's not used to, they're brand new at this?
I don't know about any of you, but I'm lazy. Like, if the remote's like over there and I want to turn on the TV, I'm like, maybe I just won't even do it. And so unfortunately, I'm that same way with ChatGPT, where I know like the more context I give it, the better the answer is going to be. But a lot of times I'm just like, whatever is in my head, and it's like each keystroke is just painful. So a lot of times I just like, and see what it works, and then I tweak from there.
Then you should use a voice interface then.
I don't like the voice interface. It reads it too slow to me. Yeah, so I use it in the car sometimes. If I'm driving and like, hey, I didn't prep for this meeting. Can you prep me on this meeting? And it's like, oh, do these things. And it's like, research this guy for a week. And I'm like, I'm driving there right now. And it's like, oh, okay, in that case, do this. But getting back to that as few as possible. So I do use the custom instructions. And so a couple things that I found that I wanted in a lot of my prompts were information about me, like where I live, how old I am, that I live with you, that I've got a son, those kinds of things. So I put that all into my custom instructions so that it's there for every single prompt. Another thing I found a lot of the times is that I want expert opinions. So like, if I get a sports injury or something like that, or my shoulder's hurting, I would say like, act as a doctor and a physical therapist and something else and to diagnose this injury. But what I found is in the custom instructions, I can just say, first, assemble a team of experts to answer this question. And then the other thing that I liked a lot was having ChatGPT, what else should I know about this? Actually, I forgot. There's two more things. So one is what else should I, what other questions should I be asking here? So after I give it something, it'll suggest other questions that I might want to ask. And then, gosh, did I just forget the thing? Oh, yeah. That piece of context that I said before. So now I've got it where it asks me questions. If I'm missing anything that you need to answer this well, ask me about it. So all that stuff goes in my custom instructions. So then again, going to like as easy as possible, I can just, paste in it as little as possible and get an answer out. I used to do a lot of copying and pasting into notes to have specific prompts for specific activities, like maybe blog generation or tweet generation or image generation. But now, like Jesse said, like now I'm, moving to these custom GPTs, which works a lot better than the notes.
I'll take a moment just to explain for those who are not using the paid version. The custom GPTs, does everyone know what that means? So when you go into ChatGPT, openai.com, whatever the URL is, you go in and you have just a screen where you can start typing into it. Custom GPTs allow you to, let's say you click Create Custom GPT. It's going to walk you through a series of prompts, a series of questions, asking what you're looking for. So let's say, for instance, Jesse talked about creating videos for YouTube. So if you create a video for YouTube, you need a title, you need keywords, like tags, you need a description, you probably need a social media post to go with it. You need a series of things. So you can go into Custom GPT, it looks just like the same interface that you're already using, but it will ask you a series of questions to figure out what you're looking for. So for instance, you'll take one of those things. I want a YouTube headline, and it will ask you questions, and you will essentially input the prompts that you think are going to help you get that YouTube headline or list of headline options that you're looking for. And then you kind of take that, you perfect it, and then once you feel, okay, I think this is giving me good results, then you save that, and now moving forward, forward, every time you want a YouTube headline, you go into that tab, you click on that GPT, and you're able to use that. You've already set it up, no copying and pasting required. It's already set up and should hopefully give you the outcomes you're looking for. If you don't have the paid version and you are using the free version, that's awesome. You can do what Dave just described, which is when you get that good prompt, when you've given it all of the, first headline you get is going to be, I don't know, have all sorts of fluff words. Like it'll say, Dave's delectable, whatever. And you're like, no, don't, so as you customize that and you get the output you want, take that prompt and save it into a Google Doc or your notes, whatever you do to save things, so that the next time you need a YouTube headline, you can take that, you can copy and paste it in, update the topic, update the relevant information, because that prompt already works. You can save yourself that time. Okay.
So one thing really quickly, again, I have a YouTube video. It takes like 20 minutes to do this. I have a video where in 20 minutes I make a GPT on our YouTube channel. So I would check that out. One of the great things about custom GPTs too is they've got memory. And so you can upload documents to the data store and it will keep those in memory for the future. And so you can reduce hallucinations by asking it to say, hey, go back to the data store. And they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, based on the data store, I need to readjust what I'm doing. So that's one of the things that I do. I will just constantly be feeding the data store with more and more examples as we come up with them. That said, one of the most important things for any kind of training is garbage in, garbage out. So if you're giving it really crappy things, like you just go, let's say you go and you download all your emails to be able to help it write better emails, but half of your emails are garbage, and you upload that, it's going to be trained on that garbage, right? So there is work that goes into selecting. So in our case, for instance, we have a massive swipe file of anytime that we get, we see cool landing pages or cool emails or whatever, those get stored in a database for our swipe file. And so when we trained our GPT, we exported the stuff we'd already pre-qualified from our swipe file, and that's what we trained it on, is stuff that we already knew was performant. But that's probably the biggest impediment to any kind of language model training, is if you don't have good data, you will get garbage results.
One thing right before we get to Ryan's question, I'm going to come to you next, that I just want to say, I feel like this is the big disclaimer that comes with all of this content creation through AI, any AI tools, is be very careful about what you're claiming as your own work. I am not an attorney. I have some Expert Connections interviews with attorneys talking about the debate about trademark and copyrights and who owns what. Basically, right now, if it's created by AI, no one owns it. So if you go into ChatGPT and you have it write a novel and you put your name on that novel and you upload it to Amazon and you're selling it, you could run into some questions. I would talk to an attorney before you do that. Now, when we're talking about creating social media posts and you're training it on content you've previously created, or email correspondence, or again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving you any guidance, but I would say it's your own content and you're sending it out in a non-copyrighted way, go for it. But as soon as you start taking that content that you're not actually creating and you're selling it, for example, to your clients, you need to be thinking about what are the potential ramifications of this. Are you using this as a tool, or are you using this to replace your own original content that you're selling to your clients? So that's just, we could have a whole session just on that alone. That's just some of the internal talks that I'm having with my team at mConnexions about how to properly use AI versus ways that maybe we feel are not in our best interest or in our client's best interest. So just big disclaimer there to make sure that you are creating your own policies, that you're checking with others if you're creating content for other people, and making sure that you're doing it in a way that protects you.
Yeah, Sports Illustrated just had an issue where they'd hired a consultancy to do articles for them, and apparently they made up fake profiles, fake articles, and then Sports Illustrated found out about it and terminated the contract and fired them and removed all the articles from their website.
Yikes. Ryan.
I'm reminded of this thought bridge. It's not really a new question, but it reminded me of, Jesse kind of alluded to this. I think that when you're interacting with AI or creating chat GPTs or prompt designing or engineering, you wouldn't have one employee doing all the roles of your business. You have one employee that might be for sales, another employee that might be for operations, and even within operations, there are multiple layers within a business where each employee might have a specialty in a certain aspect of your business. There's not one person that does it all, not even the owner of the business. ChatGPT, prompt design, GPTs, I think in my experience are the very similar way, where you want to have specialized tasks that it will be doing, and you can train that prompt or train that GPT on that specific task. And Jesse, you kind of said it, I think in my mind, it bridges just a little different way that a business can then utilize AI is thinking of it as an employee and an extension of your business, and that one employee doesn't do everything, just like AI doesn't do everything, but it can do a very specific task well if you train it just like an employee.
Thank you, Ryan, for that. Can you stay there for just one moment? Actually, I'm gonna pick on you, even though you didn't agree to do this. So I'm gonna ask the next question based on an article that I just read that I find fascinating, and part of why I am thinking of this is like the Wild West. Another marketing agency put out an article last week they work specifically with lawyers. And this article was about, I don't think we have any lawyers or people who market for attorneys in this room, but as most industries do, attorneys have rankings, different, directories. There is one called Best Lawyers, trademarked name, one called Super Lawyers, another trademark name. And you're smiling. You can see where I'm going with this. So what this article talks about is the increase in the amount of searches or queries being done on ChatGPT instead of Google as a first-time search. So imagine now I go to ChatGPT and I say, who is the best lawyer in Lansing? Best lawyer, again, remember, trademark term. Right now, ChatGPT, or as of the writing of this article, was putting out the rankings from best lawyers out as the output of that query. Okay, so that brings up to me in my mind this question of, if people start going to ChatGPT, which they are, instead of Google, to search for things like best plumber in Lansing or best marketing, agency in Lansing, how are we showing up in ChatGPT? How is this going to change the SEO work? Doesn't it feel like, wow, this work that we work really hard to do for Google rankings, this is where I feel like we're redefining how people search for and find information online. So I'm going to first ask Jesse, but then Ryan, I want to come to you. I know you do a lot of work with SEO, but I'm curious, hearing this, what are your thoughts? What's your response? Is there anything we should be doing now as marketers? Or are we just, bracing ourselves, getting ready for changes that are coming that we're going to have to learn? What do you think, Jesse? You do a lot of SEO, a lot of work when you're building websites. Should we be concerned?
I'm not. So I think about it in a couple of different ways. So first, GPT right now is a singular interface kind of in a sandbox, right? If you were to ask the same question of Alexa or Siri, which by the way are also AIs, you would get a different response. With GPT-4, for example, there's now a native integration with Bing. If it doesn't know something, it'll go search the internet and give you information. I suspect that in the future, native integration with browsing environments, I think we'll see the convergence of a browser and a chat will continue to accelerate. I think right now it's a novel feature of GPT-4. I think I wouldn't be surprised if 24 months from now that novelty is gone, and it is chat and browsing are inside of a singular interface. So that's kind of one thought. I think the second thing is from an SEO standpoint and from a content standpoint, I actually think that the urgency to produce content, your own content, is now higher. And the reason is, so Ryan was talking earlier about building chatbots, presumably with prompts and through Zapier and some other things like this. But there is a whole other dimension of chatbot, which is chatbot with memory and chatbot with actual knowledge of both your business, your content, your way of doing things. And this is something we're actually working on right now for ourselves. And you think I envision, for instance, that we will see the interface of websites change quite a bit in the coming year, maybe two, right? So I don't know how many of us remember back to websites before 2005, right? Those really ugly sort of boxy things, but no website before 2005 had search because it was just text documents. Well, Google comes around and everybody expects to be able to find things very quickly on Google. And so then they get irritated when you go to a website and you can't search for things, especially if you're a website of any with any consequence, right? If you're a 4-page brochure site, who cares? It's 4 links. But if you have any kind of content, your e-commerce, you have a lot of blogs, a lot of videos, whatever those are, people will they expected to be able to search and find. I'm already seeing in technology sites, like we do a lot of development work, obviously, that now all of their help docs are interfaceable through chat. And so I was working on a platform called Supabase, which is a vector store and database. It's a Postgres database. And I was getting stuck on some stuff, and they've got a little chat. And so I started asking it, hey, how do I do this? How do I integrate this? How do I integrate that? And it's giving me chatbot answers in real time, and then also giving me links to articles inside of the site that I can then go in for more detail so that I can dive into the details. I'm already expecting that inside of 12 or 24 months that any website with any level of content should absolutely have a chatbot that is indexed to the content and the memory of that business. And so that within 24 or 36 months, I imagine that users will start to expect intelligent chat on any meaningful site that they visit. And so to that end, I think that now we need to be producing as much good content, proprietary content as possible to start seeding our websites with the relevant data that will allow for a chat index to sit, a chatbot rather, to sit on top of that index in order to facilitate high quality chat on those websites. I think that this convergence then of browser and chat, combined with, I think, the expectation that users will expect chat on their sites inside of a coming year, I'm not at all worried about search engine optimization. I'm not at all worried about any of that. I think what will happen is the people that are making the appropriate investments and thinking about this going forward, just like 20 years ago, just like 10 years ago, just like 5 years ago, they'll prosper. And then the ones that aren't, like, won't. I guess that's kind of my read on this.
Thanks, Jesse. Ryan, what are your thoughts, especially for someone who does a lot of SEO work for law firms and attorneys?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything Jesse said. I think 100% on track. I think that just like he just started right at the end there, 20 years ago, those businesses who were not online, and even the businesses now today who choose not to be online, won't be found on ChatGPT. You're not found on Google, and it won't create a good customer experience. It doesn't matter how good of a product or service that you provide. If nobody can find you on the platform that your customer is looking for you on, then you will not get found and you will not get the business. So if you want to be relevant, if you want to be active, then you need to move with the times and whatever that might look like. Right now it's ChatGPT and it's AI. And so training, you talked earlier about having good quality. The output is only as good as the input. So if you are training the AI on the input of your website, then the user experience and the output will then reflect that. As far as SEO services or SEO, it's all of that, and it's just the training, both for the human experience, the good quality human experience. Can a customer get the knowledge and receive the service or the product that they are looking for? It doesn't matter how many blogs. It does matter because you're training, your customers and search capabilities of either ChatGPT or Google or Bing or whatever it is on and creating expert status for yourself. If you have that brochure website, where it's only 5 links on your entire website, are you an expert in your field if there is little to no information for you online? If you have a wealth and a library of information about who you are and what your business does and how much of an expert that you are, then it doesn't matter if it's ChatGPT or Google. Your customers and everybody will recognize you as an authority within your field. And people want to do business with the best business or the best attorney or plumber or whatever it is.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you letting me put you on the spot. Dave, you're a big believer that AI should also be fun. Fun, imagine that. Talk to us about what you're doing with images, for instance, because I think you're having a lot of fun with image creation. Talk about what you're doing and some of the tools you're using.
Yeah, I've been playing around with images, I guess exploring images, researching image generation for about 14 months now. And so at first I was using Stable Diffusion, which was really the first tool where you could put in a text prompt and have it generate out images, and then there was the training.
What were those first images like? Can you describe them?
Like, oh my gosh! To make a person, and it's like, yeah.
We actually have a video from a year ago. I think last January, the three of us did a video, and I included in it some pictures of us that at the time were generated. I think I had like 7 fingers on my hand or something, and Jesse was a clown apparently. And anyway, so check that out if you want to see what the images were like then compared to now.
Yeah. And then, Lenza, I think that swept across the nation about a year ago, where people were, on their phones getting avatars of themselves, Disney styles and things like that. So yeah, playing with all that, exploring all that. And I was trying to think about, maybe in April, I had realized I generated maybe 3,000 images, something like that. And I thought about, the year before without AI, how many images did I generate for the year? I don't know, maybe 50, something like that, maybe less than 50, a very small number. And I thought about that. When you multiply people's productivity like that, where all of a sudden you've got 8 billion people on the planet, and now all of a sudden they go from, generating 50 images to 3,000 images a year or something like that. What an explosion of, I guess, bounty of art for humanity. So, I think that is exciting. I've been interested in, kind of like Jesse's talking about, this new AI that's going to sweep across the world. And I don't think it's like the Wild West. I think it's like the Industrial Revolution. When they were building cars and they're hammering on things and it takes forever, and then they get this assembly line. I don't know if you guys heard this process that Jesse described, all the efficiency that's baked in there. All of a sudden his employees are superhumans. You plug in an employee there and all of a sudden they're, 50% more efficient, maybe 100% more efficient, something like that. Ryan's got an automated assistant now that, it's like 3 cents a text message or something like that. Instead of having a person, probably talk to somebody for $2, and it's 24/7, 365, no vacations, no sick time. So I think it's like the Industrial Revolution that's going to sweep across. Getting back to the art, it is. It's fun. It's like rekindling. Like all of a sudden now, instead of, if I want to make a birthday present for you or something like that, instead of going out to a website and hiring somebody and having this process of doing it, now it's like, I can generate, 100 images today of what I'm looking for, and I can send that to a designer if I want to finish it off. Somebody yesterday asked me if I could make a flyer for Santa delivery for our homeowners association. So like while I'm walking around and listening to podcasts, I just say, make another one, make another one, make another one. Who knows how long that, that for me to have sat down and do it, it would have taken me maybe a couple hours, and it would have been a worse product. But instead I sent this person like 6 images last night, the same day, turned this thing around, and it didn't impact my day at all. I went around my day just as I would have. But I think what you're talking about is my Instagram project.
No.
No, you're not talking about the Instagram project.
Unless you want to talk about, sure.
Yeah, so I thought, what does it look like for companies if you can all of a sudden create tons of images? You can maybe create 1,000 images a day to put on your social media or those kinds of things. And so I started playing with this. So I've got a Instagram account that you can maybe find that Julie is tagged in every day, making an image about Julie Holton. I love it. And there's a custom GPT for it. So before I used to copy and paste a prompt in there. Now I can do it right from my phone while I'm, don't tell the police, driving down the street, and I didn't make my post today.
Text me a link to that. I'm not even on social media.
No, it's a hidden treasure.
Kind of embarrassing.
You got to track it down. The account is grown a lot. It's up like 500% in like 45 days.
Which means it has like 5 followers. I love Julie Holton. If you want to catch someone's attention, it's a great way to go. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I did ask her. I was like, so if we weren't dating, what would you have thought if I did this?
Super creepy.
Creeper.
Just in case anybody else is wondering.
I don't know. I think the jury's still out. I think somebody should try it and report back to the next Lansing marketing hackers.
let you do that offline.
It doesn't work if you got a girlfriend. I don't think it's. I don't know if you can do two of them.
Jeffrey, question.
Certainly. Well, building off of the Industrial Revolution that you referenced there, and I know most of this room is engaged in marketing and thinking in service lines, but manufacturing, the hype and the buzzword has been Industry 4.0 over the last 3, 4, 5 years. Will AI force that to Industry 5.0, or is it just 4.1?
Yeah, I don't know about the leveling up of the numbers, but I do think so. So McKinsey released a report last year. I'd actually be interested to see their report this year on the 2023 one, but last year. So prior to so the other thing to remember is like ChatGPT just became public a year ago, right? So before that, that was so the thing that was novel about ChatGPT was the interface and the accessibility to the world. But people like Dave and I that have been in technology for a long time, like this is not actually new. Like the interface is new, the models are better, but you build AI 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. You could, if you were a developer, you could use APIs, and it was not as good, but this is not new, right? So last year, McKinsey's report, the number 1 and number 2 use cases of AI were in robotic process automation and in supply chain automations. So the use of AI in what was called big data 5 years ago, the use of AI in big data for manufacturing and process automation has been happening. It's been accelerating, but I don't think that Chat GPT or large language models, more specifically or more generally rather, I don't know that they will have the same impact on manufacturing that maybe like computer vision models have a much bigger impact on manufacturing than large language models, for instance. I do think what will happen is you will see more manufacturing principles in service lines that are made possible by large language models. So for example, our big initiative for 2024 is what we started working on this year. It's called Super Sites. And the idea is pre-made, pre-optimized, industry-specific websites that are tuned for conversions with all best practices already installed, because we've built so many of them. I have the same conversation. I'm really just being kind of lazy, right? But the reality is we're actually looking at this process as a manufacturing process. We're saying, like if you approached our work like a manufacturer and less like a service industry, how would that look different? How would you sell differently? How would you market differently? How would you produce differently? What would the margins be, right? And we've been testing this out a lot this year. And so next year, our plan is to essentially turn our service business into a manufacturing company using large language models, process automation, and some other things in order to start manufacturing and selling at scale rather than, bespoke development, which we currently do, and most of us, I think, who are in the industry kind of do now. That is something that large language models are enabling that were possible, but still much harder 15 months ago. And we've seen this year it accelerates, so that becomes much easier for people like us. And next year I expect it to, really take us to a level that we've never seen before. So that's kind of my thought on this.
Yeah, we've been talking, like Jesse said, mostly about large language models today, and we interface with those, and a little bit about vision or image creation. But yeah, Jeffrey, there are companies out there like Boston Dynamics, like Tesla, that are creating animal-like, humanoid-like robots. Thank you. So, I think maybe you've seen the dog that can run. They've got these things doing flips and dancing now. And yeah, the idea, the number one application for these things is putting them right in factories, and then they can do these things 24/7, 365. And one of the challenges too right now is having robots work alongside humans, because you want it to be safe. A robot that can lift up a car, you don't want it to accidentally, bump Jesse in the eye with an elbow, because it'll take his head off. So they're working on some of those safety things. And I don't know how close we are on that. I don't super follow that field, but I feel like we're getting there. It'll be really interesting. you know, like we grew up in the 90s where you've got these humanoid robots walking around, and those are in labs today. And I don't know, you know, is it months, is it years before they're around in our environment?
Any more questions, please feel free to head up to the mic. I know we're entering into our last few minutes here. One comment on something that Jesse was saying earlier about his team. Dave and I experienced this when we were working with a client wanting to build a custom AI solution proprietary for their specific company. One of the things that the manager we were working with said was, I have one guy on our team who performs this job function, and I just want to make his life easier. I'm not looking to replace him, but I would just like, right now he's working 1 million hours a week, and he needs more time. He needs more downtime. I need him to have more downtime so he comes back refreshed. And I loved that approach because it's not about replacing this guy's job, which frankly could happen if that's what they really wanted to. Would that be the right choice? Would that be the ethical choice? These are some of the conversations that are happening right now. But what I really loved was this C-suite exec saying, no, I just want to make his life easier. That's something that I've also heard reflected back from Jesse's team. One of his top performers, she just works her butt off. Like many of you in this room and on our own teams, she is just an all-star. And she said to me, and the last time I saw her on a Zoom call, she looked relaxed. And I'm thinking, gosh, like marriage looks good on her because she just got married. And no, come to find out, she said, I'm easily saving, like I'm saving 20% of my time each week, and we're more profitable. And so that is what the power of AI can do for us, is to hopefully act as our assistant, like Ryan's seeing, optimize our workflows, optimize, or enhance our content creation. I like to think of it as an assistant that, and actually I've even heard that the more you say please and thank you, it actually tends to respond better if you're polite to your AI. So, something to keep in mind for future, who knows?
Sometimes you gotta yell at it though.
I yell at Alexa all the time. I don't know about you guys, but she never turns the volume down when I tell her to. So I'm curious, do you guys have any more questions or any topics you want to make sure we touch on before we start to wrap up in the next few minutes? I'm happy to fill the time, but or any examples. I'd love to hear too from the group if you want to share. I think there's so much power in collaborating and coming together in communities. So are you using AI in ways that are helpful? And if you don't mind stepping up to the mic so that the recording can hear as well. Thanks, Mike. And anyone else, feel free to head over there to the mic too.
As marketers, and a lot of us have been doing this for a while before we were integrating the AI into it, how do other marketers in the room push back against people who are like, well, I don't need a marketing company anymore. We have ChatGPT. It can write my press release. It can do my this and that. It can do my. How do you fight or how do you combat clients who obviously don't know what they're doing but think they know what they're doing?
So first, guys, I know I'm the moderator. Yeah. They were never going to stay your client anyway. If they can do it if that's all they needed was some help, an assistant, then they were not the right client. So I don't push back. And in fact, our clients, we haven't had any clients leave. Our clients are very open and excited to see how AI tools can actually help us to enhance what we're doing for them. We really focus on the personalization aspects. We focus on the data that we can collect using AI tools so that our ads are performing better because we're using better targeting. We're learning more about their actual clients and not just their client personas. So when it's like, what was I saying the other day? Like, I used a really bad example. Our 16-year-old son has special needs and he has not yet taken driver's ed. And so he does not know anything about driving a car. And so I was using the example of, if he's driving the Tesla, he still doesn't know what he's doing. The Tesla can auto drive itself, right? But you still need that human who actually can hit the brakes when it's needed, or can I don't know, fix correct the steering, or like you wouldn't just let the car drive itself, right? It just doesn't do that yet. And I still wouldn't trust our 16-year-old who doesn't know how to drive to be driving the self-driving Tesla. You still have to know what you're doing in order to use the tools. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's my answer.
I think it's you got to know what you're doing to use the tools. So, hammers were invented a long time ago. Shovels were invented a long time ago. Calculators were invented a long time ago. Calculators are probably the best example because everybody could have been like, "Oh, calculators are coming. What are the physicists going to do? And what are all these people going to do?" But you give calculators to us, like we're not going to be doing nuclear physics. And so the same thing. Maybe Julie, not me. So the same thing with AI. You're just going to be better at it because you're in the marketing world. And so you'll also use it to create a press release, but your press release will be better because you've done it before versus, a business owner, whoever, who's just like, "I've never done this before. Like, make me a press release." And it's like, here you go. But I think it does raise the bar up, because all the competitors are going to be doing that. So it's going to raise the bar up. Before calculators or before shovels, and the best thing was like digging with your hands. If you're digging with your hands when somebody else is doing shovels, it's not going to work out too well for you. And it's that same thing with AI. You've got to be using it in your marketing and use the best tools to stand out and differentiate and deliver for the clients.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything much more to add other than like I would agree. It's if that's the client's attitude, you get a better client. The one thing I will say that I'm grateful for with that kind of question and attitude, and we see it, is for me, it represents a new opportunity for product development, right? So on the one hand, we get to say, okay, here's a whole group of people that we won't work with. That's great, right? But it also gives me opportunities now to say, what can I build and productize that will allow us to service those people? If you want a press release, well, then let's figure out how to make a really great press release tool that we can then sell them, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. It's, great. We don't need to use any labor on the service, but we can build a product that maybe works.
Ryan.
I think the way that I first think about answering this question is, what is the best use of your time? So as a business owner, if you're making $1,000 an hour and you're spending your time on marketing activities, is that the best use of your time? Or if you're making $10,000 an hour or $100,000 an hour, but now you're spending that time creating a blog that can be done by a marketing professional who that is their job. So that's where my mind goes with that. So the best use of your time, and for the business, how do they want to spend their time? Doing what they're an expert in or doing what I'm an expert in?
I love that. And that's a great way to wrap up. We actually, on that very topic, Dave and I have an Expert Connections video that comes out tomorrow on YouTube talking about, and I kind of start it by saying, like, who doesn't want to be more efficient or more profitable? Who says, like, nope, I want to spend more time doing things I don't have to? I don't think anyone, hopefully. So we have a video on that tomorrow. So check out Expert Connections on YouTube. Check out Super Web Pros on YouTube. Check out our websites. The last thing I'll ask as we wrap up is for you guys to connect with Dave and Jesse. If you have questions, if you have feedback, connect with them. One final plug, we also have been leading an AI meetup group. So if you are interested in learning more about AI, getting hands-on demos, we bring laptops so people, or you can bring your own so you can like dive in and actually start using these tools. The great thing, I think it's really cool, is we have a lot of people who speak techie language like these two guys. And then we also have people who don't at all. So the first hour of the AI meetup is focused on all users. Even if you've never used AI, that is the time for you. All business operations, life operations, everything you can think of to be using AI tools like ChatGPT. The second hour is the deeper dive. So the Ryans, the Daves, the Jessies of the room, really hearing how they're creating these custom chatbots and sharing that kind of information, the developer techie language with each other. So our next event is December 14th at Foster Swift Law Offices downtown, and would love to have you come. It starts at 5:00, and then you can also look online. There's a meetup for AI. What is it? What's the name of the meetup group?
Lansing AI Meetup.
Lansing AI Meetup. So join that. If you're on Discord, talk to Dave. He can get you in the Discord group with all of the other developers talking their techie speak. So thank you guys for the interaction, and thank you for having us today.